Welcome to H-Frame, the only comprehensive, entirely unofficial guide to vintage Black & Decker Workmates. The website is hframe with a hyphen .weebly.com, where you will find the results of my in-depth research, over 60 web pages, over 100 PDF documents, over 500 photographs, and still growing. This video is a quick guide to the 10 different types of the Black & Decker Workmate 79001 folding portable workbench and vise from the 1970s and 80s. Many owners of vintage Workmates want to know which version they have and what the differences are between the versions. I will give you a brief look at the features that distinguish the various types from each other using 9 different Workmate 79001s as examples. I'm also producing a set of videos going into more detail about each of the individual types. From 1974 to 1982, Black & Decker sold 10 different versions of the 79001 that they referred to as the Type E through the Type 9. They also sold a very similar model as the 79004. In addition to the model number, most Workmates were marked with their type number when they left the factory. The markings appear in a variety of ways over the years. I show examples of the different markings for 79001s at my website. However, with these now over 40 years old, many of them have lost their markings. 7 of the 9 in this video have nice clear markings. 1 has a blurred but recognizable marking, and 1 has no marking. In this video, I'm going to show you the key features that positively identify the different types of the 79001, even if it is not marked. On each 79001, you only need to check from 1 up to 4 characteristics to identify the type. I have seen a very, very small number of Workmates that this abbreviated guide will not work correctly for. It'll give you a faulty identification of the type, but the odds are that you won't ever come across one of those. They are that rare. Even with those, further examination and watching my other videos that have more detail about the individual types will determine the type. Now let's look at the various types in mostly chronological order. The all-aluminum multi-piece skeleton frame uniquely identifies a 79001 Type E. Unlike all the subsequent types, the entire frame of the Type E is made of cast aluminum, approximately 27 pieces. The footrest is the only major component not of aluminum, instead made of galvanized steel. The frame design has earned it names like skeleton frame, spider-legged, and lunar module. The Type E was sold from early 1974 to fall of 1974. It was made not in Canada, but in England, where it was sold under its original model number of WM325. In the US, it was relabeled as the 79001 Type E as part of a market test to evaluate the marketability of the Workmate in North America. Calculations I've made based on almost 700 79001s that I've documented estimate that Type E's make up roughly 2% of all 79001s remaining today, so they are relatively difficult to find. All of the numbered types that followed the Type E are made almost entirely of stamped steel, with the exception of the aluminum H-frames that are on some of them. So next here, a shiny unpainted steel frame combined with jaws that have 10 holes for swivel pegs identify a 79001 Type 1. All of the major steel parts are plated, probably with cadmium, giving it the shiny appearance you see here. The Type E and the Type 1 are the only two Workmates that have no painted parts. You can count 5 peg holes along each edge of each jaw. A unique feature of the Type 1 that isn't readily visible is that the peg holes are 3/4 of an inch in diameter, which makes them slightly smaller than the 20mm holes found on all of their Workmates. I mentioned earlier that one of the Workmates, the 79001s, has no type marking. This is the one. You can see right here on the label, it just says it's a 79001 Workmate. None of the Type 1s was marked as such because at the time Black & Decker hadn't planned for multiple types that they would want to keep track of. Type 1 was produced from October 1974 to April 1975. My estimate is that roughly 4% of all 79001s are Type 1s, so more common than the Type E, but still not easy to find. Next, we have aluminum H-frames, again. Jaws now down to 9 peg holes, and rear jaw pivot nuts made of aluminum. The rear jaw pivot nut is this piece that the vice screw threads into to open and close the jaws. Looking at the jaws, you can see that along the edge where they meet, there are only 4 holes in each jaw rather than the 5 found on the 2 that I just showed you. The Type 2 was produced from May 1975 to June 1977. My estimate is that roughly 43% of all 79001s are Type 2s, making it by far the most common type. Now, of course, these estimates of percentages I'm giving you are kind of gross approximations. They could vary by a fair amount from that, but I'm confident that they give you a good proportional idea of the mix of 79001s that are out there. The blue paint, the aluminum H-frames, and the 4-ribbed step with all of the ribs running the length of the step are the 3 features that uniquely identify a 79001 Type 3. It was manufactured in Ireland and sold in the UK as the WM625. It was imported to the US and relabeled as the 79001 Type 3 to supplement North American production. My estimate is that roughly 2% of all 79001s are Type 3s, similar in numbers to the Type E. I'm going to go out of sequence at this point and skip from the Type 3 to the Type 5. And that is because the Type 5 is nearly identical to the Type 3, with blue paint and aluminum H-frames, but the 4-rib step now has a center section of cross ribbing, where the ribbing goes front to back rather than side to side. Those three features combined tell you it is a 79001 Type 5. There are some other slightly visible differences, and I go over those in my video for the Type 3 and the Type 5. But the cross rib step is the most easily visible of the differences between them. The Type 5, it differs from the Type 3 in another way that isn't visible. The Type 5 weighs about 4 pounds less than the Type 3, making it the second lightest 79001 after the Type E. So the Type 5 was, I think you could probably guess, it's another variant of the UK model WM625, and this one supplemented US sales sometime in 1977. The Type 5 is by far the rarest 79001. My estimate is that probably less than 0.5% of all 79001s are Type 5s. In years of searching, I have found only 2 79001 Type 5s among possibly as many as 2,000 workmates that I have looked at. The Type 4 brings a little bit of potential confusion to the identification game. This is because early Type 4s have aluminum H-frames and can be hard to distinguish from the later Type 2s. Late Type 4s have steel H-frames and are very similar to the Type 6. So first of all, you can ignore the different H-frames when trying to ID a Type 4. Instead, what you should look for is the combination of 3 components: the double layer jaws, that is with 2 layers of plywood along the edge where the jaws meet, the rear jaw pivot nut made of black plastic rather than aluminum. I showed you the aluminum one on the Type 2, and slip-on rubber boot style feet on 3 of the 4 legs, plus a, let's see if I can get it down here, plus a single screw-in adjustable foot on the right rear leg. A Workmate that has all 3 of those components is a Type 4. Type 4 was produced from June 1977 to October 1978. My estimate is that roughly 21% of all 79001s are Type 4s, making it the second most common type after the Type 2. Continuing in sequence, if a 79001 has steel H-frames rather than aluminum ones, single layer jaws without the second layer where the 2 jaws meet, and top release levers that you see right here made of black plastic rather than steel, those 3 characteristics combined identify it as a 79001 Type 6. This, of course, was the Type 6 followed the Type 4 in production from Brockville, Ontario, in spite of the gap in the numbering there. The Type 6 was produced from November 1978 to September 1979. My estimate is that roughly 10% of all 79001s are type 6s. This is where the very similar model 79004 comes in. I've owned a couple of these, but I don't have one to show you now. If a Workmate has aluminum H-frames and plastic top release levers, as I just showed you here, rather than steel, those two features define it as a 79004, which was made only as a type 1. To make things really confusing, the 79004 type 1 that I just described to you is extremely similar to some 79001 type 4s. If you follow my guidance here, you should be able to tell one from the other reliably. Another defining feature of the 79004 is an electrical outlet strip attached to one of the side stays, but this is sometimes missing today. The 79004 was produced from January to August 1979, so this was during the same production, during a portion of the same production period as the Type 6, both being made at Brockville during that same time. The numbers for the 79004 today are probably comparable to the Type E, so fairly rare. Another wrinkle that comes up right in this period of production was that Black & Decker also had a model called the Workmate that was extremely similar to the 79004 and was sold primarily in Canada. It has the Workmate name prominently cast into one side of the aluminum H-frames with Black & Decker on the other side, so it's easy to tell that it's not a Workmate even though it looks like one. I don't have a 79001 Type 7 to show you, but it is nearly identical to the Type 6. It's not even quite clear why they changed the type number. The main difference is that they brought back the steel top release levers, so the Type 7 had the steel ones rather than the plastic top release lever I'm showing you right here on the Type 6. So if a 79001 has those steel top release levers, steel H-frames, single layer jaws, and 3 rubber boot feet plus a single screw-in leveler foot on the 4th leg, those 4 features combined tell you it is a Type 7. Type 7 was produced from September 1979 to June of 1980. My estimate is that roughly 8% of all 79001s are Type 7s. The Type 8, again, changed very little from the Type 7 that preceded it. If a 79001 has slip-on rubber boot feet on all 4 legs, as you can just see here, it has no leveler feet on the ends of the legs, and it has steel U brackets for mounting the top. That's these brackets right here. It is a Type 8. The Type 8 was produced from June 1980 to November 1981. My estimate is that roughly 8% of all 79001s are Type 8s. The Type 6, Type 7, and Type 8 are found in very similar numbers. making them the third, fourth, and fifth most common 79001s, not necessarily in that order. Rectangular holes in the front corners of the metal step. As you see here, this rectangular hole on both sides, and rectangular black plastic rectangles for the jaw mounts identify a Type 9, which was the final type of the Workmate 79001. I'll point out that there's also a significant change in the mechanism for folding and unfolding. I go into detail in my video for the Type 9, but you can see here there's a round button that gets used when you're both folding and unfolding, different from what's done on all of the other types of the 79001, and a feature that carried forward into some later models. The 79001 was replaced in 1982 by the 79033, which is also known as the Workmate 300. It has those same holes in the front step, and it has the same jaw mounts, and it has the same round buttons. However, it is marked very prominently as the Workmate 300, both on the crossbar of the front H-frame and the top of the jaws. So there shouldn't be any mistaking it for 79001 in spite of the shared design. The Type 9 was produced from November 1981 to April 1982. My estimate is that roughly 2% of all 79001s are Type 9s. This makes it yet another rare one, similar in numbers to the Type E and Type 3. So that's my quick guide to type identification for the Black & Decker Workmate 79001 and 79004. You can find lots more about them and about all of the early Workmates at my website, hframe.weebly.com, including owner's manuals, part diagrams, catalog and newspaper appearances, as well as assorted discoveries I have made that are not documented anywhere else. Thank you for watching.